Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking a minute to join us for the webinar today for delivery driver best practices. We got a big group here today, and it looks like people from all over the U.S., which is awesome. It's good to see people from different places logging in. We'll get started with just a few quick housekeeping notes. The PowerPoint today goes along with the general conversation to help give you some visual stuff to go along with what we discuss. At the end, we'll have a question and answer period. If anybody has questions, all you do is just submit the question through the chat function. It's on the tab on the side. Just type in your question in the chat and hit enter. And then when we get to the end, we'll answer any questions we possibly can for you. If you want to look at this live presentation afterwards, it will be saved and available on societyinsurance.com. And we also have a YouTube channel, a Society Insurance YouTube channel that they can be viewed or reviewed again anytime if there's some information you missed. Before we start, I just do a quick introduction of Society Insurance if you're not really sure who Society is or if you're new to the company. We are a regional insurance carrier that's based in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. We currently write business in 7 different states. We're in Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Tennessee, Minnesota, and Colorado. We've been writing workers' comp insurance since about 1950. We actually just had our company's 100-year anniversary celebration about 6 years ago. Today we do property liability and commercial auto coverage, but we really focus on the hospitality industry. That's kind of our niche, and that's where we focus so we can do the best job for that niche in particular. We've got 3 presenters today. My name is Shelby Blundell. I'm the moderator today, and I'm going to turn it over to Pat to introduce himself.
Thanks, Shelby. My name is Pat O'Brien, and I am a senior risk control representative covering the states of Iowa, Minnesota, and the western half of Wisconsin. I've been in the insurance industry for almost 25 years now, and with Society Insurance for 16 years. Jay?
My name is Jay Van Derzen. I'm one of a risk control representative for Society Insurance. My territory is the northeastern portion of Wisconsin. I've been in the insurance industry for about 35 years and with Society for 21 years. Greg?
Thanks, Jay. I'm Greg Bailey. I'm the risk control rep for Illinois, Iowa, and Western Indiana, and I've been with Society for 2 years now.
Awesome. Great game here. There is a disclaimer here, something we put on every webinar, just something that you got to do these days. I won't read it out word for word, but there it is if you want to take a look at it. I will also mention, just kind of like everybody right now, we're all working remotely. We're presenting this webinar from our home offices spread across multiple states. So if you do hear a jet flyover or a puppy dog wanting to introduce himself, please excuse the distraction, but I think we're all used to that, the way things are right now. There's also a handout. You'll see that's attached. Some of the things we'll discuss today are in the handout. It's a safety program that we put together that has a driver safety program in it. I'm going to mention it now just so you have time during the webinar if you want to save that electronically or if you want to print it off. It does have the driver safety program, but it also has a lot of really good information about all aspects of the food service operation. So it's there. Please take it, use it if you can. We've got 3 learning objectives today. Hopefully you have a little better understanding of what to look for when you're hiring a new delivery employee, how to effectively manage delivery driver safety, and basic training methods for delivery drivers by the time we end the session today. Now I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Shelby. What we're seeing is a significant increase in food delivery operations than what we've seen in the past. Delivery sales were projected to reach $41 billion in 2021 prior to entering 2020. And what we've seen is in 2020, they surpassed $45 billion in delivery sales, with the National Restaurant Association projecting that to continue to rise. And with that, demand for increased food deliveries, the risk of distracted driving increases as well. The CDC stated that in 2018, there was over 2,800 fatalities and an estimated 400,000 injuries that were attributed to the distracted driving. And OSHA also estimates that every 12 minutes someone dies in a motor vehicle crash, and every 10 seconds an injury occurs, and every 5 seconds a crash occurs. Many of these accidents occur during the workday or during the commute to and from work, which could include the delivery drivers. And this risk is associated with food delivery operation is present whether you're in a small town or a large metro area. Next slide, please. So one way to help reduce the risk of losses and accidents occurring during the delivery driver process is hiring quality and reliable drivers. I hear a lot from our clients that it's hard to hire good employees and keep quality employees throughout the process, but here are some items to consider when possible we're looking for new employees. Experience doesn't always mean better performance when it comes to driving. Some people develop bad habits that are hard to stop when they have been doing them for years. We all seen people next to us at the red lights checking messages or even checking messages while driving, and that's a distracted operation. If it's possible, you may want to consider hiring a new applicant for a non-delivery position to determine if they're reliable enough to drive for the business. Another thing to consider is checking for the past employment history on the application. Anything that shows positions that are held, driving positions that are held for short periods could indicate that there are poor driving habits that made them get out of that position. Checking references as well is a good idea if they list them, although some may not be valid as many don't want to list potential negative references. MVRs should be evaluated, or motor vehicle records should be evaluated prior to hiring and then established routinely after that, which will be discussed later. The condition of the vehicle could also lead to accidents if there's dirty interiors or cluttered. There's items shifting during driving that may cause somebody to look away from the road and result in an accident. And also, prior to instituting a drug testing policy, you should consult with your attorney. So this is an example of what a motor vehicle records check, or MVR, would look like. They may differ in appearance from state to state, but they genuinely have the same information, which we'll discuss next. What you want to look for is the expiration date. You obviously want to make sure that they're driving on a valid license, and it'll also give you a time to consider if they renew it on time, or it'll give you that date. It'll also list any infractions or offenses and the date and severity, which could list potential driving tendencies. There may be restrictions on the license as well, which could be no nighttime driving, or certain operations they may not be able to drive certain vehicles. So that's something to consider when hiring a new employee as well. A driver may also lose their driver's license for any number of reasons, and they may not try to tell the employer that they lost their license because they depend on the job. So it is important to maintain the MVR checks. And what you're looking for is any tendencies that may display poor driving habits that could cause issues for your business when they're out driving, delivering your food. And also, society insurance policyholders receive a discount rate on IntelliCore employment screening products.
All right. I have a poll question we're going to ask, get everybody involved a little bit. Of the top 20 most dangerous jobs, delivery drivers in all industries are ranked as the blank most dangerous. And you'll be able to put in your answer. Is it A10, B8, C6, or D2? Looks like we're getting a good number of people voted. Go ahead and enter your answer if you could. We'll talk about it when we're done, but we're always curious to see where everybody falls on it. Looks like we're up to about 75% of people have chimed in. Give it just another second here. Okay. Looks like the number one answer is that 36% of people said 6, and followed by 27% say an 8. What did you have, Greg, for that answer?
Yeah, it's good. They do rank 6. They're just in front of farmers and right behind trash collectors, which you can see obviously driving is a dangerous job. And now I'll turn it over to Pat.
All right. Thanks a lot, Greg. Yeah, I've been tasked with going over the basics of how to manage delivery operations. With this section, the hope really is that you will obtain a better understanding of how to keep your employees safe and prevent vehicular accidents through effective management of your delivery operations. We're going to cover 4 areas today: driver safety program, written policies, procedures, driver agreements, and then finally, other safety strategies related to delivery operations. So now with workplace safety, it is always important, and is especially important when workers are asked to do something new or something unusual. Some of you on the line here might be seasoned professionals when it comes to delivery operations and are just kind of looking for ideas to improve, while others may be relatively new to this and are looking for some advice. So with that said, when it comes to managing delivery operations, it is really important that you develop a driver safety program so that drivers not only know how to handle difficult situations, but how to ensure their own safety. So at a minimum, your program should include a delivery driver selection outline with driver acceptability criteria. The criteria could be a point system with so many points assigned based on the motor vehicle violation, and then at a certain point threshold, that driver would no longer be a good candidate for delivery. For delivery. There could also be criteria that immediately removes them from the driver rotation. Your program should also have a list of safety rules, and these could be things such as no eating while making deliveries, follow all traffic laws, and absolutely no passengers. Of course, these are just a few examples, and more than likely, you will have several more, or at least you should have several more. Other items to include are your driver expectations and the training outline. The training will be discussed in more detail in a bit, but I do strongly recommend mandatory distracted and defensive driver courses as a must. Next, what you do in the case of an accident is an important component of a driver safety program. You should really develop some crash reporting protocols, such as assessing the situation, making sure to check that you are no longer in danger, call for help if necessary, document and exchange information, and be sure to report the accident to all necessary parties. Really, all crashes, regardless of severity, should be reported to the employee supervisor as soon as possible after the incident. And procedures should clearly guide those drivers through their responsibilities in a crash situation. Finally, putting a list of what to do in the event of a robbery, including how to minimize your risk of actually being robbed, should be a part of the driver safety program. Some things to consider: always request a callback number from the customer and verify that number prior to delivery. You can ask the customer to turn on an exterior light and then let them know the driver will only deliver to the front door. Drivers should always park as close to the dwelling as possible. Drivers should always carry a flashlight at night. You can provide the vehicles with panic alarms. Limit the amount of cash being carried by delivery drivers. And with that said, consider a magnetic sign for delivery vehicles that reads something like, no cash carried in this vehicle. I really do recommend working with your local police to help you set up these procedures. Okay, moving on. Written policies or procedures. These can be used to enhance your driver safety program, or they can be a part of the driver safety program. Either way, here are some things you really should consider. Now, as Greg mentioned earlier, you should be checking motor vehicle records before hiring a driver, but you should also have a motor vehicle records check policy in place. This policy should outline how often records will be checked to ensure the driver maintains a good driving record. You also need to clearly define the number of violations a driver can have before losing that privilege of driving for work. Second, consider having a credit or debit card only policy for all deliveries, or at least after a certain time of night, say after 9 p.m. This way, drivers do not have to carry cash. You can even place this information on takeout menus, websites, so forth and so on. I also recommend that you have a vehicle selection, maintenance, and inspection policy. Properly maintaining and routinely inspecting company vehicles will be an important part of preventing crashes and the related losses. It is also not a bad idea to review and consider the safety features of all company vehicles to be used for deliveries. Look for those vehicles that demonstrate a best-in-class status, whether it be for crashworthiness and overall safety, and those should be the ones that you're choosing and being made available for your drivers. As for personally owned delivery vehicles, not all are going to be appropriate for delivery purposes. So guidelines to consider, it should really be a passenger type vehicle, so avoid motorcycles or something similar. It should appear to be in a roadworthy condition. So we're talking no rust buckets here, no cracked windshields, no missing parts, and you kind of get the idea there. They should have working lights and wipers, be clean on the inside and out to respect your company image. And it's really not a bad idea to have something or some type of a secure storage area for the food being delivered. Okay, so for company vehicles, you should be on they should be on a routine preventative maintenance schedule for servicing and for also checking of safety-related equipment. Regular maintenance should be done at specific mileage intervals, so those should be consistent with the manufacturer's recommendations. It's not a bad idea to have a mechanic do a thorough inspection of each vehicle at least annually, and then those can be documented and placed in the vehicle's file. Getting back to personal vehicles, those used for delivery are going to generally be the responsibility of the owner, and they may not necessarily be subject to the same criteria. However, they still should be maintained in a manner that provides the employee with maximum safety and reflects positively on the company. So again, we're saying no rust buckets here. This basically means at a minimum, drivers should be routinely checking tires, mirrors, blinkers, windshield wipers and fluid, headlights, etc. And ideally, you're doing that before each shift. And when it really gets down to it, this needs to apply to both your company and personal vehicles. All right, moving on to this disciplinary action system. So this provides a strategy to determine the course of action after a moving violation or a quote-unquote preventable crash. Now, there are a variety of corrective action programs out there, and a majority of these, as I kind of mentioned earlier, are based on a system that assigns points for these events. So no matter how you have it set up or how you get it set up, it should describe what specific action or maybe actions will be taken if a driver accumulates a certain number of violations or preventable crashes in what would you say would be a predefined period. Or there could be specific actions at various point thresholds, similar to a progressive discipline program that you might have in place for other safety or job-related concerns. Well, let's see. It can sometimes be beneficial to have specific policy statements that stress the importance of related safety rules. So these would be policy statements that are clearly worded, specific statements that address your most critical safety concerns, such things as no texting or cell communication while driving, making sure you're always wearing your seatbelt, and again, that no passengers. You can really use these to kind of reinforce the importance of safety. Okay, circling back to employees using their personal vehicles for business, it is recommended that you have them check with their personal insurance carrier, and this is to see if they need some type of business use endorsement, and based on the fact that they're going to be using that vehicle for delivery. Now, some personal insurance excludes coverage for the for-hire deliveries, so it really is a good idea to work with your insurance agent to make sure your business auto and or your general liability policy is meeting your needs, especially if food delivery is now a new part of the operations. The risk to your business when offering food delivery, when drivers are using their personal vehicles, really depends on the vehicle's owner having recommended liability insurance limits and that aforementioned business use endorsement if it is needed. Generally, the minimum liability insurance limits of $100,000 per person and $300,000 per occurrence are recommended. However, you should again check with your insurance agent to verify that your drivers do have those minimum limits, and that would be based on your state's requirements, because obviously these can vary from state to state. Further, always ask to see your driver's insurance card to verify they have liability insurance that has not expired, and keep a copy of that on file and check back periodically to make sure you have a current copy and it's still active. Also, we previously discussed crash reporting as part of the driver safety program. So with that, it is equally important to have procedures in place for crash investigation, and you should establish some type of crash investigation process. So like I said, all crashes, big or small, should be reviewed to determine their cause and whether that incident was preventable. What you're really trying to do is find those root causes of crashes, because when you can understand the root causes of crashes and why they are happening, regardless of fault, you can develop ways to prevent them in the future. So with that, we now have a poll question, which I believe Shelby is going to walk us through.
All right. Now, this one we're going to use to get to know you guys a little bit. Last one we picked your brain. This one just to get to know you. Do you currently require delivery drivers to sign a driver agreement? We got the answers coming in. Looks like started out trending no, but now it's trending more yes, which is good. Give it just a few more seconds here and let everybody chime in. Looks like I'm going to go ahead and close it here. Looks like we're going to end up with a 60-40 split, with about 61% saying yes, they do require it, which is good.
Yeah, that's actually excellent. I typically find in the field when I'm out there asking about these, it's about a 50-50. So the fact that 61% of you say that you do have it, that's actually very good to see. I will say that the intent of the driver agreements is really to establish a contract with all the employees who will be driving for work purposes. So that'd be whether they drive assigned company vehicles or they're driving their personal vehicles. I kind of view them as a one-stop contract. So by signing the agreement, your driver really acknowledges their awareness and understanding of the company's driver safety policies, the procedures you have in place, and those expectations regarding their own driving performance, their proper vehicle maintenance, and then, of course, reporting of incidents. You can include all components of your driver safety program in the driver agreement, so really they only have to sign one document instead of signing multiple. All right, we'll move on here. Other items that recommended to include as part of your management of delivery operations, I really do recommend it, and as you may be doing, is use your caller ID. Now, caller ID obviously helps identify who is calling, and it can be used to trace the location of the customer. Display your cash limits. So if delivery drivers are going to be carrying cash, the vehicle should have a sign that reads something, drivers carry limited amount of cash. Use GPS. So GPS systems can obviously be used to locate drivers that may be in trouble. If drivers are going to be using their smartphones for directions, consider providing a dashboard phone mount. Avoid late night deliveries if it's possible. Obviously, late night deliveries tend to be more hazardous. For deliveries to hotels or motels, you can deliver to the main desk, not to the individual rooms. And then last but not least, require check-ins from drivers if you haven't heard from them in a certain amount of time. This isn't everything that's out there, but hopefully will give you some ideas on additional items that can reduce the potential for a delivery driver injury or some other related loss. All right, now I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention OSHA as part of a safety presentation, because as you may or may not know, transportation is the most frequent cause of death in the workplace. So OSHA does require employers to have a driver safety program in place if it is going to be part of your operations. They recommend the 10 program steps listed on this slide to minimize crash risk, which, as you can guess, is the most likely way a delivery driver is going to be injured. We discussed most of these throughout the presentation to this point, with the primary exception being the driver training, which, as luck would have it, is a nice segue for our next presenter, Jay, who will discuss what training to have in place, how to do it, and how often to do it.
Thanks, Pat. That was a lot of good information. I would like to talk a little bit about workplace training. First of all, what is it? I'm going to start with a very brief description. Sounds kind of technical. We're not going to test you on this one, but workplace safety training is a process that provides your employees with the knowledge and skills to perform their jobs safely. Now, why is workplace safety important? First of all, it's a good opportunity for drivers to grow their knowledge and improve their job skills. Second, it's a good idea. And third, OSHA requires it. And also it shows drivers specific hazards they're exposed to and how to protect themselves from those hazards. You should always have a training program in place. And I know Pat talked a little bit about what you should have. You should have some type of safety training, not just for your drivers, but for all your employees. Seeing we're concentrating on drivers today, we're going to talk a little bit about driver safety. You should have some distracted and defensive driving training. You should also have some basic rules, written policies and procedures in place for your drivers, as Pat covered previously. And probably also should include some training on slip, trip, fall prevention and winter driving. And this is, for all our listeners that are in the northern states here, as well as I do, that when that first snowfall hits, a lot of drivers don't remember how to drive in the snow. Now I'd like to talk a little bit on how to conduct training. First of all, there's several different ways you can train your drivers. There's a classroom training, there's video training, online training, and then basically on-the-job training. Now, each of these four methods has its own advantages and disadvantages, and it's up to you to decide which is best for your drivers. Just want to go over one example of advantages and disadvantages. One example that the classroom training has as far as an advantage is that it can have either a large or small group, where an advantage that online training has, you don't have to have a group. You can have all your employees separated. They can do it at their house. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about frequency of training. How often should you train your drivers? Here are some things to consider. New hire, ongoing training, and length of training. So there is really no right and wrong amount of time or style, whether it be classroom or online training. It's up to you guys. It's whatever it takes to get your drivers to be trained safely. First things first, all drivers, when hired, should be trained on your company's safety policies immediately after they're hired. Driver safety training should be part of the onboarding process. This is an important step because it gets employees to perform their jobs in a safe way. So after their initial training, how often should your drivers be trained? As a rule, it can't hurt to retrain or review your safety policies once a year. However, there are other times that you should be training or retraining your employees beyond that once a year. And some examples of this are after a traffic violation, a near miss, or an accident. And why would we want to train after an accident? Well, it's to correct a possible negative behavior. You can also retrain or train when there's a change in process. Now you're going to ask, what's a change in process? Well, that could be, you're delivering widgets and now you're delivering sprockets. So each of the sprockets you might need different safety procedures in the delivery. So you're changing a product being delivered. Another change in process would be a new vehicle. Your driver may be used to a certain vehicle, and now you buy a new vehicle, and things are different. So they need to be trained on the use of that vehicle. Another one would be a change in territory. Another one would be, again, as far as if you're delivering food and you're delivering cold foods and now you're delivering hot foods need to be cared for differently while they're being delivered. There's also some regulation mandated training. For example, if you're doing some DOT training or hazardous material hauling, you need to train and retrain every few years on that. And again, and another one is seasonal drivers, especially during the winter, as I just talked about. Now, to supplement your training, you can hand out safety material to your drivers on a weekly, monthly basis. Society Insurance does have plenty of handouts, and we'll talk about that later, that you can use in driver training. You can find a lot of driver training information online also. Also, you don't want to use driver training to punish a driver. You don't ever want to single out an individual employee for an unsafe act or poor behavior, because training is used to reinforce positive behavior and correct a poor behavior. So in order to do driver training, you're going to need driver training resources. Now, where can you get those resources to train your drivers? First of all, Society Insurance, we have many resources that can help you train your drivers. We have safety handouts. We have partnered with a video vendor where they have driving safety videos for you guys. The handouts and the videos are free of charge. You can also go to some national and local safety councils. They have a lot of information that can help you train your drivers. You can go to OSHA. Now, people are saying, well, I'm not going to call OSHA. OSHA is not going to record your phone number and come out and inspect you after you give them a call and ask them for information. I know many people believe that and think that, but they just don't. They don't have the time. And also, you can do just a general internet search of driver safety training, and you'll get plenty of sites to look at.
All right, we got one more poll question to get everybody involved again. This is an easy one, just a true or false. Driver training should only be done once a year. Do you find that to be a true statement or false statement? And people have been listening to Jay because they're rapidly saying false. Jay, I'm going to turn it back to you. 95% are saying that that's a false statement.
That is correct. It is a false statement because training should be done at least once a year, but can be done more due to, as we talked about earlier, changes in seasons, winter to summer driving, summer to winter driving, a change in the process, new vehicles, different products being delivered, moving violations or accidents, and obviously it's part of your onboarding process. Next, I'd like to bring Pat back into the mix to close things out.
All right, thanks very much, Jay. Well, we did cover quite a bit in a somewhat short amount of time here. So just to summarize, a safe and successful delivery business really does start with that hiring process. Next, you must effectively manage the delivery operations, which means developing and then implementing a driver safety program. Now, this program can include written policies, procedures as part of the driver safety program, or they could be separate components of the overall management piece. Finally, you will need to provide good employee training to make sure employees understand the expectations and the role in keeping themselves safe. What it ultimately comes down to, just like anything, is a commitment by senior management and good employee involvement. So to wrap it up, we hope for those of you with delivery operations, you have reaffirmed what you are doing is good or maybe even better than what you had thought, or you have discovered some new ideas to help you improve your delivery driver safety. For others, we hope that you have increased your knowledge on what goes into these operations and can start building a safe and profitable food delivery process. So we have included some organizations or notes, if you will, on where to find more detail on much of what we discussed during this webinar. Like Jay said, a quick internet search for these items listed on the slide will provide you with hours of fun research related to driver safety. I will say that the National Safety Council has a variety of training resources for drivers, and of course your insurance agency is an excellent resource for coverage related questions and probably can help you with driver acceptability criteria as well. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Shelby to close us out.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. We always like to plug our website because we put a lot of effort into what we provide. We try to provide a lot of resources you guys can use. We want them to be free resources so it doesn't hit the bottom line. You don't have to go out and look for things from somewhere else. We have a risk control library that has lots of handouts that you can use just to print off for like pre-shift meetings. You can gather the wait staff, print off something once a week or something to give to them, staple it to a paycheck when you give it to them and say, hey, could you take a look at this? Any little reminders like that are good. Jay mentioned the safety video. It's a streaming service. It's completely free for you guys to use. So you can either show it as a group or you can tell a new hire to sit down with their smartphone in the booth in the dining room and watch a video or two if there's something specific you're wanting to get through to them. We also have the programs and discounts that can save some money. We partnered up with ServSafe that gets a discount on all of their training programs, like the alcohol program, which is for Illinois, like the Bassett program, the food handler, which is required in many states, and all the other programs that they have. We also, Greg mentioned the IntelliCorp. You can get a good discount on doing background checks for staff. They've really worked with us well, and the feedback I've gotten from customers said that the IntelliCorp has made it really easy to use, and so it's not a big deal. But go ahead and check that out. We've also got our blog with lots of things there. We do at least a monthly blog that's got safety topics and stuff. So we put a lot of effort into providing the resources. Hope you guys use them and find them useful. Now I'll take a look and see if we had any questions. I'm looking, and we've got 2 or 3 that have come in. So if you didn't have a chance to answer or to put in a question, you want one, just throw it in the chat function there on the side and hit enter. I'm going to put the first one back to Greg. Somebody asked how often MVR should be checked ideally, is that an annual thing or semi-annual?
Yeah, thanks, Shelby. That's a good question. You definitely want to check it prior to hiring, and then just, you kind of want to do it routinely after that, whether it is quarterly or semi-annually. That's kind of the best range. There could be a lot that could happen in a year, so annually you might not catch something in between then, but you definitely want to establish a policy like Pat said, just keep routinely checking them.
Okay. The next one, I believe, would go best to probably Pat. They're asking, should vehicle inspections be in writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the simple answer is yes, because as the saying goes, if it is not in writing, or in other words, documented, it doesn't exist. Although I would say or add that, pre-shift visual inspections that a driver should be doing, they don't necessarily have to be documented. They are just basically, making sure everything is working, lights, wipers, mirrors are adjusted, those basic things that we kind of all do periodically anyhow. What I do recommend is documenting any service work that you have done, or if there are going to be some inspections that a manager may do either once a month or quarterly, those should probably be documented. And then obviously if you are taking it in for like an annual inspection through a mechanic, I'd recommend documenting those as well.
Thank you. Got one more, and I don't want to leave Jay out, so I'm going to send this one to Jay. She's asking, what is the easiest way to go about doing the training for employees? And then kind of followed up with, is on-the-job training as effective, or is classroom or video training better? And I think just looking for some general feedback on training methods.
Well, the easiest way is probably on-the-job training. Let me just ask you about that. It's a fairly simple way of learning. Excuse me. It's more economical for the business owner. You business owners don't have to hire a trainer. Your coworkers can, your other coworkers for the employee can train your new employee or your new hire. A disadvantage though for on-the-job training is not every one of your employees have the skill to be a teacher or a trainer, and sometimes it can lead to rushing the new employee through because the employer wants the person on the job, as soon as they can. So if that answers your questions.
I believe that'll work. And that is, still haven't had any others come through. So I believe with that, we will call it a wrap. I really appreciate everybody joining us today. Hit Society's website, just societyinsurance.com, if you want to know more about Society and the protection that we offer, or take a look at the risk control website, see if there's anything that you could use. Thanks for joining us and have a good day.